The morning sun rose over Viridian Prime, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Daesung wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked across his small farm. The dirt was dark and rich under his boots. He had worked this land for 15 years, and every year it got better. Around him, the other farms gleamed like jewels. The Velkari farmers grew their crops in perfect rows that stretched for miles. Their plants were all exactly the same height, the same color, the same shape. They used machines that hummed and glowed with blue light. They never touched the soil with their hands. Daesung's farm was different. His vegetables grew in uneven rows. Some tomatoes were big, others small. His lettuce had different shades of green. Weeds grew between some of his crops, though he left them there on purpose. His tools were simple: a shovel, a hoe, a watering can. His home was a small hut with dirt floors and a roof made of wooden beams and clay tiles. The Velkari were tall beings made of living crystal. Light passed through their bodies and made rainbow patterns on the ground. They thought they were the best farmers in the galaxy. They thought Daesung was a fool. "Look at the human," one Velkari farmer said to another as Daesung walked past their land. "Still playing in the dirt like a child. I heard his daughter helps him," the second Velkari replied. "Such a waste. She could learn proper farming at our academy." Daesung heard them but said nothing. He carried a bucket of compost to his tomato plants. The compost smelled rich and earthy. It was made from old vegetable scraps, dead leaves, and other natural things. The Velkari thought it was disgusting. They used chemical mixtures made in factories instead. His daughter Hana came out of the hut carrying a basket. She was 17 years old with dark hair tied back in a practical bun. She wore simple clothes that were already dirty from morning work. "Father, the council sent another message," she said quietly. "Counselor Vextar wants to see you tomorrow." Daesung sighed. Vextar was the administrator who controlled all the farms in this region. He was a large Velkari, with bright purple crystal formations on his shoulders. He loved power and hated anything he called inefficient. "What does he want this time?" Daesung asked. "He didn't say. But there's something else." Hana's eyes were worried. "The Harvest Festival is next week, and there's news about a special visitor coming to our planet." The Harvest Festival happened every year. All the farmers brought their best crops to display in the central plaza. The Velkari always won prizes with their perfect vegetables and fruits. Daesung always brought his produce too, even though people laughed at it. That evening, Daesung visited his neighbor Kyojin. The old man lived 3 farms away in a house that used to look like Daesung's hut. But last year, Kyojin had started changing things. He bought some Velkari equipment. He started using their chemical fertilizers. His dirt floor was covered with metal plates now. "You should see my crop yields," Kyojin said proudly, serving tea. "Up 30% from last year. The Velkari methods work," Daesung. "You should try them." "And how is your soil?" Daesung asked. Kyojin frowned. "What do you mean?" "Pick up a handful. Smell it." "Does it smell alive?" The old man looked uncomfortable. "The Velkari say, soil is just a medium. What matters is the nutrients we add to it." Daesung shook his head slowly. "Soil is not just dirt, old friend. It's a living thing. Millions of creatures live in every handful. They work together to feed the plants. When you kill them with chemicals, you need more and more chemicals each year. The Velkari have only been farming for 800 years. My family has been farming for thousands. Times change," Kyojin said. "We're not on Earth anymore." The Harvest Festival arrived with great celebration. The central plaza was filled with displays. The Velkari farmers showed vegetables so perfect they looked artificial. Giant pumpkins that weighed exactly the same. Corn with exactly 18 rows of kernels on every cob. Apples so shiny and red they looked like they were made of plastic. Daesung set up his small table in a corner. He brought carrots of different sizes and shapes, tomatoes in red, yellow, and purple, lettuce, with deep green leaves that still had a few bug holes in them, potatoes that were lumpy and covered in real dirt. A group of young Velkari stopped at his table and started laughing. "Look at these ugly things," one said. "They're all different sizes. And they have bugs eating them," another added. "Doesn't this human know about pest control?" Hana stepped forward, her face red with anger. "These vegetables are healthy and natural. They taste better than your factory plants. They have more nutrients, too." "Nutrients?" The Velkari laughed harder. "We engineer our plants with exact nutrient profiles. Your father's crops are random accidents." An older Velkari joined them. It was Counselor Vex Tar. His crystal body gleamed with authority. "Miss Hana, your father's methods are outdated. In fact, I've been meaning to speak with him about his farm. It's the least productive in the region. Resources are limited on Viridian Prime. We cannot afford to waste good land on primitive techniques. My father's farm produces enough for our needs," Hana said firmly. "Needs are not the standard," Vextar replied coldly. "Efficiency is. Maximum output per acre. That is what matters." He turned to Daesung. "I'm giving you official notice. You have 6 months to increase your yields to acceptable levels or adopt modern farming methods. Otherwise, your land rights will be revoked." A crowd had gathered. Some humans looked sympathetic but said nothing. The Velkari whispered among themselves. Even Kyojin looked away, embarrassed to be associated with Daesung. "I understand," Daesung said quietly. That night, as Hana angrily scrubbed pots in their hut, Daesung sat outside looking at the stars. He thought about his grandfather's farm in Korea, terraced rice paddies that had been farmed for 1,000 years, soil so rich and alive it felt warm in your hands. His grandfather used to say that the land remembered every farmer who cared for it. "We're going to lose the farm, aren't we?" Hana asked, sitting beside him. "Maybe," Daesung admitted. "But the land will remember what we did here, whether the Velkari understand it or not." 3 days later, a new announcement spread across the colony. Empress Shivara herself would be visiting Viridian Prime. She was touring agricultural worlds across her empire. Every farmer was ordered to prepare their best displays. The visit would happen in 4 weeks. Counselor Vextar called an emergency meeting of all farmers. His crystal body practically vibrated with excitement and nervousness. "This is the greatest honor our colony has ever received," he announced. "The Empress will see the finest examples of Velkari agricultural science. Everything must be perfect. I am ordering all unsightly structures to be hidden or removed. All farms must meet minimum aesthetic standards." After the meeting, a Velkari inspector visited Daesung's farm. He looked at the dirt hut with disgust. He measured the uneven crop rows. He took notes on a glowing tablet. "This entire property is classified as an eyesore," the inspector said. "You have 3 weeks to either modernize or vacate. We cannot have the Empress seeing such primitive conditions." Hana protested, but Daesung touched her shoulder gently. "What are we going to do?" Daesung knelt down and picked up a handful of his soil. He let it run through his fingers. It was dark and crumbly, full of life. He could see tiny white threads of fungus, small insects, bits of decomposing plant matter. "We're going to plant tomatoes," he said calmly. "The heirloom variety from my grandfather's seeds. They take exactly 3 weeks to mature in this season. Father, this isn't the time for..." "Trust me," he said, his eyes twinkling with something Hana couldn't quite understand. "The land will speak for itself. It always does." So while the Velkari farmers polished their equipment and arranged their perfect crops, Daesung planted tomatoes in the same careful way his grandfather had taught him. He sang old songs while he worked. He thanked the soil for its gifts. And he waited. The colony transformed itself for the Empress's visit. Workers built decorative arches over the main roads. They planted flowers in perfect geometric patterns. Every building was cleaned until it sparkled. The Velkari farms looked like something from a dream, with their endless rows of identical crops gleaming under artificial lights. Dae-sung's farm remained the same. He worked his soil each morning, turning the compost into the earth. His tomato plants grew steadily, their leaves a healthy dark green. Hana helped him water them by hand, carrying buckets from the well. Counselor Vextar visited twice more, each time angrier than before. "You have 1 week left," he said on his second visit. "The Empress arrives in 10 days. Your farm is a stain on this colony's reputation. I'm prepared to forcibly relocate you, if necessary." "This is my legal land," Dae-sung replied calmly. "I have paid all fees and followed all agricultural regulations. There are regulations about maintaining community standards," Vextar snapped. "Your primitive hut violates aesthetic codes. Your yields violate productivity minimums. I will find a legal way to remove you." After he left, Hana sat on the ground, her head in her hands. "Why are they so angry at us? We're not hurting anyone." Dae-sung sat beside her. "Fear," he said simply. "What we do here challenges everything they believe about farming. If our way works, then maybe their way isn't the only way." That's a frightening thought for people who built their whole society on one idea. That night, Hana couldn't sleep. She took her homemade analysis tools and examined samples from both her father's farm and a neighboring Valkyrie farm. She had been studying xenobiology through free online courses, teaching herself with salvaged equipment. What she discovered made her sit up straight. The Valkyrie soil samples showed almost nothing alive. No bacteria, no fungi, no insects. Just sterile dirt, mixed with chemical nutrients. Her father's soil was full of life. Under her microscope, she could see thousands of tiny organisms moving, eating, reproducing. The soil was an entire ecosystem, but there was something else. In the Valkyrie samples, she found traces of something strange. A fungus, but one that looked wrong. It had unusual structures that suggested it might be harmful to plants. It was present in small amounts, too small to cause problems yet. But it was there. She showed her findings to her father the next morning. "The Valkyrie crops might be in danger," she said. "This fungus could spread. It might be some kind of blight." "Should we tell them?" Dae-sung asked. "I tried," Hana said sadly. "I sent a message to the agricultural department yesterday. They replied that a dirt farmer's daughter with no credentials shouldn't waste their time with false alarms. They said their genetic monitoring systems would detect any real threats." Dae-sung nodded slowly. "Then we've done what we can. We cannot force people to listen." 2 days before the Empress's arrival, something unexpected happened. Late at night, someone knocked on their door. Dae-sung opened it to find a Valkyrie female standing there, looking nervous. Her crystal body was a soft blue color, and she wore the uniform of a xenobotanist. "Please forgive the intrusion," she said quietly. "My name is Bo-ra. I work at the Colony Research Center. I would like to see your farm, if you permit." Dae-sung stepped aside and let her enter. Bo-ra moved carefully through the hut, her eyes wide. She touched the dirt floor gently. She examined the jars of seeds on the shelves. She studied Hana's drawings of crop rotation patterns that hung on the wall. "May I see your fields?" she asked. Outside, Bo-ra knelt beside Dae-sung's tomato plants. She touched the soil with wonder. "It's alive," she whispered. "Truly alive. I can feel the biological activity. All soil should be alive," Dae-sung said. "That's how nature designed it." Bo-ra walked through the farm, examining everything. She saw the compost bins and asked detailed questions about how they worked. She observed the weeds growing between crops and was amazed when Dae-sung explained that they attracted beneficial insects and prevented erosion. "I've been studying agriculture for 40 years, Bo-ra said. "We Valkyrie believe we perfected farming 8 centuries ago. We created systems of absolute control and maximum efficiency. But something has been bothering me for years." "What is that?" Hana asked. "Our crops are becoming weaker. Each generation requires more intervention to grow. Our soil is dead and getting worse. We need more chemicals every year just to maintain the same yields. But when I suggest that something is wrong, my colleagues say I'm being emotional. They say the data proves our methods are optimal. Data can tell you what is happening, Daesung said. But only wisdom can tell you why. A living soil feeds itself. A dead soil needs constant feeding from outside. Which one do you think is sustainable forever? Bora was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "May I take samples? For private study. I won't share them with anyone without your permission." "Of course," Daesung said. "Knowledge should be shared." Bora took samples of soil, compost, and plant material. Before she left, she turned back to them. "I want you to know that I respect what you're doing here. Most Valkyrie won't admit it, but some of us have wondered if we lost something important when we stopped letting farms be natural places. Thank you for showing me this." After she left, Hana smiled for the first time in days. At least one of them understands. 1. The next day brought chaos. Word spread through the colony that the Empress's ship had arrived early. Instead of coming in 2 days, she was already in orbit. Counselor Vextar panicked. His carefully planned displays weren't finished. The decorative arches weren't complete. Some farms still had equipment visible that was supposed to be hidden. Emergency announcements blared across the colony. All farmers were ordered to their stations immediately. Everything had to be perfect within hours instead of days. At Daesung's farm, he simply continued his work. He checked his tomato plants. The first fruits were beginning to ripen, turning from green to a beautiful deep red. He smiled. His grandfather's heirloom variety, growing strong and healthy in alien soil. Hana ran up to him, breathing hard. "Father, the Empress's ship landed an hour ago. They say she's already beginning her tour. She's visiting farms right now, without any advance notice. Counselor Vextar is going crazy. Then she will see things as they truly are," Daesung said peacefully. "That seems wise for an empress. But what if she comes here? What if she sees our hut? We could be arrested for embarrassing the colony." Daesung picked one of the ripe tomatoes. It was perfect, warm from the sun, with a smell that was rich and earthy. He held it out to Hana. "If she comes here, we will welcome her," he said. "We will show her our farm with pride. We have nothing to hide, and nothing to be ashamed of. This land is healthy. Our methods are honest. That's more than many can say." Reports came through the colony network throughout the day. The Empress was moving through the agricultural zones with a small escort. She stopped at several Valkyrie farms, asking questions. Witnesses said she seemed unimpressed. She examined the crops with a critical eye. She asked about soil conditions and genetic diversity. Her questions made the farmers nervous. As the afternoon sun began to lower, Daesung saw a group approaching in the distance. Several vehicles moved along the road. They were heading toward his farm. Hana saw them too, and gripped her father's arm. "It's them," she whispered. The vehicles stopped at the edge of Daesung's property. The doors opened, and Valkyrie guards stepped out first, their crystal bodies gleaming with armor. Then came Counselor Vextar, looking terrified. And finally, a Valkyrie female, who was clearly different from all the others. Empress Shivara was ancient. Her crystal body had colors that shifted and changed like oil on water. She was taller than the other Valkyrie, and she moved with a grace that came from centuries of life. When she looked at something, you felt like she saw not just what it was, but what it had been and what it could become. She stopped at the edge of Daesung's farm. Her eyes scanned the uneven rows of crops, the simple tools, the small dirt hut. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the Empress said 3 words that changed everything. "I want closer." Counselor Vextar started to speak. "Your Majesty, this is just a primitive." "Silence," the Empress said quietly. Her voice was soft, but had the weight of absolute authority. I said I want a closer look. And she began walking toward Dae-sung's hut. Her guards moved with her, scanning for threats. Dae-sung straightened his back and bowed respectfully. He was covered in honest dirt, his simple clothes worn from work, his hands rough from labor. The Empress stopped in front of him. She was twice his height, and her presence was overwhelming. But Dae-sung met her eyes without fear. "You are the farmer here?" she asked. "Yes, Your Majesty," Dae-sung replied. "May I enter your home?" Around them, the Velkari officials looked horrified. Enter a dirt hut? The Empress herself? But Dae-sung simply nodded and walked to his door. He opened it wide and stepped aside. The Empress stepped into the small hut, and her guards followed close behind. Councillor Vextar tried to enter too, but the Empress held up one crystalline hand. "Wait outside," she commanded. "You as well, Commander. I will call if I need you." The guards looked uncertain, but they obeyed. Only the Empress remained inside, with Dae-sung and Hana. The ancient ruler looked around the simple space with careful attention. She studied everything: the dirt floor, the wooden shelves, the hanging herbs, the simple furniture made from scrap materials. She walked to the wall where Hana's drawings hung. They showed crop rotation patterns, companion planting diagrams, and detailed sketches of beneficial insects. The Empress studied them for a long time. "These are yours?" she asked Hana. "Yes, Your Majesty," Hana said nervously. "I've been studying how different plants help each other grow, and how insects can control pests naturally without chemicals." The Empress touched one, drawing gently. "Remarkable. You taught yourself this?" "My father taught me to observe. The rest I learned by watching." The Empress moved to the shelves where Dae-sung kept his seeds. Hundreds of jars, each labeled carefully. She picked up one jar containing small, dark seeds. The label was written in both Korean and English. "Grandfather's heirloom tomatoes. 47 generations. 47 generations. 47 generations." The Empress read aloud. "This seed line has been in your family for 47 growing seasons?" "Longer," Dae-sung said. "That's just how many generations my grandfather counted. His grandfather grew the same tomatoes, and his grandfather before him. We don't know how far back they go." The Empress held the jar up to the light. "In my empire, we engineer new crop varieties every few years. We believe constant innovation is necessary for progress. But these seeds, they carry the memory of thousands of years." She set the jar down carefully and turned to face Dae-sung. "I have visited 7 agricultural worlds on this tour. I have seen farms that produce food for millions. I have seen genetic laboratories that can create any crop imaginable. But I have not seen anything like this. It's just old earth farming," Dae-sung said humbly. "Nothing special. Nothing special." The Empress knelt down and touched the dirt floor with her hand. Her crystal fingers pressed into the dark soil. "Tell me, farmer, how long have you worked this land?" 15 seasons, Your Majesty. "And in those 15 seasons, has your soil improved or declined?" "Improved. Each year it gets richer and more alive." The Empress stood and walked to the door. She looked out at the farm with its uneven rows and diverse crops. Then, she turned back to Dae-sung. "I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly. How many continuous years of production can this soil support without artificial intervention?" "Reeler, with Thon?" Dae-sung thought carefully. "My grandfather farmed the same land for 60 years. His father farmed it before him. The soil on Earth, if you care for it properly, can produce forever. It becomes a partner, not a resource." The Empress was quiet for a moment. Then she called out, "Commander!" The crystal guard appeared immediately. "Yes, Your Majesty? Send for Councillor Vextar and the xenobotanist Bo-Ra. I want them here within the hour. Also, prepare modest accommodations. I will be staying on this property tonight." The commander's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, The imperial suite has been prepared in the capital. This location has no facilities suitable for, I said, prepare modest accommodations, the Empress repeated firmly. A simple shelter will be sufficient. I wish to speak more with this farmer. That is not a request, Commander. The commander bowed and left quickly. Counselor Vextar appeared moments later, practically shaking with anxiety. Your Majesty, please. If there's anything wrong with the facilities, I can. Nothing is wrong, the Empress said. I am choosing to stay here. You are dismissed. Return at dawn tomorrow. Vextar looked like he wanted to argue but didn't dare. He bowed deeply and left, shooting confused and angry looks at Daesung. Hana quickly prepared tea using herbs from their garden. The Empress accepted a simple clay cup and drank slowly. She seemed to savor the taste. Real mint, she said with surprise. Grown in soil, not a hydroponic solution. I can taste the difference. As the sun began to set, Bo-Ra arrived. She looked nervous but curious. The Empress gestured for her to sit. You are the xenobotanist who has been studying diverse agricultural systems, correct? The Empress asked. Bo-Ra glanced at Daesung in surprise. Yes, Your Majesty. Though I didn't know anyone was aware of my research. I read all reports from my agricultural worlds, the Empress said, including the ones that get dismissed by local administrators. Your observations about declining soil health were noted. Tell me what you have learned from this farm. Bo-Ra hesitated, then spoke with growing confidence. Your Majesty, I took samples here 3 nights ago. The soil on this farm contains approximately 10,000 times more microbial diversity than standard Velkari agricultural soil. The crop plants show natural disease resistance that our genetically enhanced varieties lack. And there's something else. Continue, the Empress encouraged. There's a fungal blight spreading through Velkari farms across this continent. It's subtle, not causing major damage yet. Our monitoring systems haven't flagged it as a threat. But it's there, and it's growing. I found it in every Velkari farm sample I tested, but not here. The Empress asked. It's here too, Bo-Ra said. But it's being kept in check by other organisms in the soil. Natural competition. The blight exists in this ecosystem, but it cannot dominate because there are hundreds of other fungi and bacteria competing with it. In our sterile soil, when the blight eventually adapts to our defenses, it will have nothing to stop it. The Empress was silent for a long moment. The weight of this information seemed to settle on her. How long have you known about this blight? She asked. 3 months, Your Majesty. I reported it to my superiors. They said I was being alarmist. They said our genetic monitoring would handle any real threats. And if they are wrong, Bo-Ra looked down. Then we could face crop failures across multiple worlds. Our agricultural system is highly efficient, but it's also fragile. Everything is optimized for current conditions. If those conditions change, we have no backup, no diversity to fall back on. The Empress turned to Daesung. And your farm? If this blight became stronger? My? End quote. Some plants might suffer, Daesung admitted. But the soil would fight back. Other organisms would fill the gap. That's what living soil does. It adapts. It finds balance. It's not perfect, but it's resilient. Night fell, and the commander returned with a simple shelter, a tent made of fine materials but basic in design. The Empress thanked him and dismissed the guards to a respectful distance. They sat together in Daesung's hut, an ancient empress, a xenobotanist, a farmer, and his daughter. Daesung served a simple meal of vegetables from his garden, cooked over a small fire. Tell me about Earth, the Empress said. Tell me about your grandfather's farm. Daesung spoke of Korea, of terraced rice paddies that climbed mountains, of farmers who knew their soil like family members. He spoke of agricultural wisdom passed down through generations, of techniques refined over thousands of years. We have a saying in Korean farming, he said. The land remembers. If you treat it well, it will feed your grandchildren's grandchildren. If you exploit it, it will fail your children. The Empress listened intently. We Velkari have been farming for 800 years. We thought that was a long time. We thought we had mastered agriculture. But you're telling me that humans have been farming for thousands of years? 10,000 years at least, Hannah said. I've been reading the histories. Humans developed agriculture slowly, learning from mistakes. We didn't engineer perfect crops from the beginning. We partnered with nature and let evolution help us. Evolution. The Empress repeated. We Velkari use genetic engineering to skip evolution. We design exactly what we want. Faster, more efficient. But evolution is nature's way of finding solutions you didn't know you needed, Daesung said gently. When you design everything, you can only solve problems you already know about. Evolution solves problems you haven't imagined yet. 1. Evolution. The Empress stood and walked to the door. She looked up at the stars, her ancient eyes seeing patterns that others might miss. I have lived 817 years, she said quietly. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen technologies that seemed miraculous become obsolete. I have seen civilizations that thought they had found the perfect way to live. I collapse. When conditions changed, she turned back to them. We Velkari are proud people. We believe we have perfected many things, but pride can be dangerous. It makes you stop learning. It makes you stop questioning. Your Majesty, Bora said carefully. Are you saying that our agricultural system might be flawed? I am saying that this human, working alone with primitive tools, has created something that might be more valuable than all our technology. Not because it produces more food, but because it will keep producing food when everything else fails. The Empress looked at Daesung with respect. Tomorrow, I want you to show me everything. How you build soil, how you choose plants, how you manage pests. All of it. Will you teach me? Daesung bowed. Your Majesty, I'm just a farmer. I'm not a teacher or a scientist. The best teachers, the Empress said, are those who have learned through doing, not just through theory. I want to understand what you understand. My empire may depend on it. Dawn came slowly to Viridian Prime. The Empress emerged from her tent and found Daesung already working in his field. He was on his knees, checking the moisture level of the soil with his bare hands. The morning dew sparkled on the leaves around him. You start early, the Empress observed. The plants tell you what they need if you listen in the morning, Daesung replied. Before the heat of the day changes things. The Empress knelt beside him. Her crystal body caught the early sunlight and scattered rainbows across the dark soil. Show me how to listen. 1. Daesung picked up a handful of earth and held it out to her. First, you must touch. Feel the texture. Is it sticky? Too dry? Just right? The Empress took the soil in her hands. She squeezed it gently. It holds together, but crumbles easily. That's perfect moisture, Daesung said. Not too wet, not too dry. Now smell it. The ancient ruler brought the soil close and inhaled. Her eyes widened slightly. It smells alive, rich, complex. That smell is billions of organisms working, Daesung explained. Bacteria breaking down organic matter. Fungi spreading through the soil. Tiny insects moving through their tunnels. Each one has a job. Together, they create something no machine can make. Living Earth. Bora arrived early as well, carrying her analysis equipment. Commander Talvik came with her, looking uncomfortable but curious. The Empress had requested their presence. Your Majesty, Talvik said. I must advise that you have an empire to run. We've received 17 urgent messages overnight, requesting your attention. The empire can wait a few hours. The Empress replied. What I'm learning here might save that empire. Now, Be quiet and observe. Dae-sung led them to his compost area. 3 large bins sat in a row, each at a different stage of decomposition. The first contained fresh vegetable scraps, grass clippings, and dead leaves. The second was partially broken down. The third was finished. Compost. Dark, crumbly, and rich. This is the heart of the farm, Dae-sung said. Everything returns to the soil. Nothing is wasted. We take from the earth, and we give back to the earth. The Empress examined the bins closely. We, Velkari, view agricultural waste as a disposal problem. We incinerate it, or compress it for removal. That's because you see it as waste, Hana said, joining them. But there's no such thing as waste in nature. Everything is food for something else. Dead leaves feed fungi. Fungi feed bacteria. Bacteria create nutrients for plants. Plants feed us. We return the scraps to the soil. It's a circle. Bo-Ra was running scans of the compost with her equipment. Extraordinary, she muttered. The diversity of organisms in here is incredible. There are species I don't even have in my database, she muttered. Many of them came from Earth, Dae-sung said, in the soil that clung to my original seeds. They survived the journey across space and found a home here. Now they work with local organisms. Nature adapts. Commander Talvik spoke up, his military mind focused on practical matters. This is fascinating, but how does it scale? The Empire has billions of people to feed across hundreds of worlds. You have a small farm. Can these methods produce enough food for our needs? It was a fair question, and everyone looked at Dae-sung for the answer. Come, he said. Let me show you something. He led them to a section of his farm where different plants grew close together. Tomatoes climbed on stakes next to beans. Lettuce grew in the shade of taller plants. Flowers bloomed between the vegetable rows. This looks chaotic, Talvik said. Velkari farms have 1 crop per field. Clean, organized, efficient. It looks chaotic, but it's organized by nature's rules instead of geometric rules, Dae-sung explained. The beans add nitrogen to the soil. The tomatoes benefit from that. The lettuce needs shade in hot weather. The tall plants provide it. The flowers attract insects that pollinate everything and eat the pests that would damage crops. Companion planting, Bo-Ra said. I've read about it in ancient texts, but I've never seen it practiced. Each plant helps the others, Hana added. When you grow only 1 crop in a field, you create a feast for that crop's pests and diseases. They multiply quickly because there's nothing to stop them. So you need pesticides. But those pesticides kill beneficial insects too. So you need to hand-pollinate or use mechanical pollinators. It becomes more and more complicated. Whereas in a diverse planting, Bo-Ra said, understanding dawning on her face, the pests have natural predators. The diseases have competition. The system regulates itself. The Empress walked between the rows, observing everything. She stopped at a section where plants grew that Dae-sung hadn't planted deliberately. These are weeds, she said, identifying several plants that the Velkari would immediately remove. We call them volunteers, Dae-sung said. Some are useful. This one prevents erosion with its deep roots. That one attracts beneficial insects. Some I pull because they compete too much. But some I keep because they serve a purpose. How do you know which to keep and which to remove? Talvik asked. Experience, observation. My grandfather taught me some. Some I learned by trying and failing. Some I'm still learning. Farming is not something you perfect. It's something you practice. They spent the morning walking through the farm. Dae-sung showed them his crop rotation plan, how he never planted the same crop in the same spot 2 years in a row. He explained how different plants took different nutrients from the soil, and how rotation kept the soil balanced. He showed them his water conservation methods, simple swales and berms that caught rain and let it soak into the ground slowly, mulch that kept moisture in the soil and prevented evaporation, Valkyrie farms use irrigation systems that deliver exact amounts of water at precise times. The Empress noted. Your method seems less controlled. Control is different from partnership, Daesung said. I can't control the rain, but I can work with it. I can create conditions where the water I have goes further. It takes observation and adjustment, not perfect planning. By midday, they returned to the hut. Daesung served tea again, and they sat in the shade. The Empress had been quiet for the last hour, clearly thinking deeply about everything she'd seen. You said something yesterday, she finally spoke. You said soil becomes a partner, not a resource. I think I understand now. Resources are things you extract from. Partners are things you work with. Yes, Daesung said simply. We Valkyrie have been extracting, the Empress continued. We take from the soil, and we give back only chemicals. We thought that was enough. But it's not, is it? We've been mining our farmland, not farming it. Bora nodded sadly. Our yields are maintained only through increasing interventions. Each year, we need more additives, more genetic modifications, more pest control. We thought we were advancing, but we were just running faster to stay in the same place. And eventually, you would fall, Daesung said gently. The soil would become so dead that no amount of chemicals would make it produce. Or a disease would come that your genetic defenses couldn't stop. Or the cost of interventions would become too high. The Empress looked old suddenly, despite her crystalline beauty. The weight of 800 years showed in her eyes. I have failed my people, she said quietly. I encouraged this path. I celebrated our agricultural efficiency as proof of our superiority. I gave medals to scientists who created perfect crops. I never asked whether perfection was the right goal. You haven't failed, Hana said with surprising boldness for someone speaking to an empress. You're here now. You're learning. That takes courage. The girl speaks truth, Commander Talvik said. Your Majesty, you could have ignored this farm. You could have dismissed it as primitive and moved on. Instead, you stayed to learn. That is wisdom. The Empress stood and walked to the edge of the farm. She looked out across the colony, at the gleaming Valkyrie farms, with their perfect rows and sterile efficiency. Commander Talvik asked the important question earlier, she said. Can this scale? Can these methods feed billions? Daesung joined her. Yes, but not overnight. You cannot transform your entire agricultural system quickly. That would cause food shortages and suffering. You must start small. Test these methods. Learn from both success and failure. Train farmers in new ways, while maintaining the old ways as backup. It will take time. How much time? A generation, maybe 2. But you've been farming for 800 years. What's another 20 or 30 years to build something that will last forever? The Empress turned to face him directly. Would you teach others? Would you share your knowledge with Valkyrie farmers? Of course, Daesung said. Knowledge grows when it's shared, like seeds planted in many fields. Then I have a request, the Empress said. Will you come to the Imperial Agricultural Council? Will you present these methods to the scientists and administrators who shape farming policy across my empire? Will you help us find a new path? Daesung looked at his small farm, his simple hut, his daughter, who watched with wide eyes. I'm just a farmer, he said. I'm not a speaker or a politician. You are a teacher, the Empress said firmly. You taught me more in one morning than I've learned in years of reports and presentations. My people need what you know. Will you help them? Daesung looked at Hana. She nodded, encouragingly. He thought of his grandfather, who had always said that good soil should be shared, not hoarded. Yes, he said finally. 6 months had changed everything and nothing at all. Daesung stood in his field on Viridian Prime, his hands deep in the rich soil. The morning was cool, and his tomato plants were heavy with fruit. In the distance, he could hear voices, students asking questions, comparing notes, discussing what they'd learned. His small farm had become a training center. 3 times a week, farmers from across the colony came to learn traditional methods. Some were Velkari, some were human, and some were from species Dae-sung had never seen before. They all had one thing in common: they wanted to learn a different way of farming. Hana emerged from the hut carrying a tray of seedlings. She was different now, more confident. The Imperial Science Academy had accepted her as a special student, allowing her to study while also working on the farm. Her research on soil microbiomes was already attracting attention from scientists across the Empire. "Father, the Velkari students are ready for the composting lesson," she called. Dae-sung smiled and walked toward the group of 6 young Velkari waiting by the compost bins. One of them was Tae-young, who had replaced Counselor Vex-tar as the regional administrator. Unlike his predecessor, Tae-young was humble and eager to learn. "Good morning, teacher," Tae-young said respectfully. "I'm not a teacher," Dae-sung said as he always did. "I'm just a farmer who shares what he knows. Now, who can tell me why we keep 3 compost bins instead of 1? A young Velkari female named Sojin raised her hand. "Because compost takes time to form. While one bin is being filled with fresh material, another is decomposing, and the third is ready to use. It creates a continuous cycle." "Exactly right," Dae-sung said. "In nature, nothing stops. There is always something growing, something dying, something being born. We copy that rhythm." He showed them how to turn the compost, mixing it to add oxygen. The students took turns, their crystal hands getting dirty for perhaps the first time in their lives. Some looked uncomfortable at first, but Tae-young worked with enthusiasm. "It's warm," he said with surprise, feeling the heat from the decomposing material. "Like it's alive." "It is alive," Hana explained. "Billions of organisms are working in there, breaking down material and creating heat as they work. That heat is energy being transferred. Nothing in nature is wasted." After the lesson, as the students left to practice on their own plots, Bo-ra arrived. She had been appointed as the Imperial Coordinator for Agricultural Diversity, a new position created specifically for her. She carried data tablets and looked excited. "Dae-sung, I have news from the pilot programs," she said. "The results from the 3 test worlds are remarkable. Soil health has improved by measurable amounts in just 6 months. The farms using integrated methods show increased resilience to environmental stress, and the blight we detected, it's being controlled naturally in the diverse systems." "That's wonderful," Dae-sung said. "But 6 months is nothing. We need to see what happens after years, after decades." "I know," Bo-ra said. "But the council is impressed enough to expand the program. They're authorizing 20 more worlds to begin transitioning. They want you to help train the coordinators." Dae-sung nodded slowly. This was good news, but it was also overwhelming. He was just one person, and the empire was vast. As if reading his thoughts, Bo-ra added, "You won't be alone. We're creating a network of training farms. Each one will teach farmers, who will then teach others. Your methods will spread through practice, not just through theory." That afternoon, Dae-sung received a message. The Empress requested his presence on the Velkari homeworld. The Imperial Agricultural Council was ready to hear his formal presentation. 3 days later, Dae-sung found himself on a ship traveling to the heart of the Velkari Empire. Hana came with him, as did Bo-ra and Tae-young. As they approached the homeworld, Dae-sung stared out the window at the massive planet below. "I've never been anywhere this important," he said quietly. "You're the most important person in agricultural policy right now," Tae-young said. "The whole empire is watching. That's what scares me." Hana took her father's hand. "Just be yourself. Talk to them the way you talk to us. You're not trying to prove you're better than them. You're just sharing what grandfather taught you." The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of Velkari officials sat in curved rows, their crystal bodies creating a rainbow of colors. At the center sat the Empress on a simple chair. She had refused the ornate throne that was traditional for such events. Daesung walked to the speaking platform. He wore his simple farm clothes because he had nothing else. He carried a bag that he set down carefully. The head of the council, an ancient Velkari named Elder Kresh, spoke first. Farmer Daesung, you have been invited to present alternative agricultural methods to this council. The Empress has spoken highly of your techniques. However, many here are skeptical that primitive methods have anything to teach an advanced civilization. You may begin. Number 4. Number 4. Number 4. Daesung took a deep breath. The room was silent, hundreds of eyes watching him. He thought about giving a speech, using scientific terms, trying to sound impressive. Instead, he opened his bag and pulled out a jar of soil. He held it up. "This is my farm," he said simply. 15 years of work in one jar. He walked along the front row, letting the council members see it up close. Some leaned away in distaste. Others looked curious. "It looks like dirt," Elder Kresh said. "We all know what dirt looks like." "Do you?" Daesung asked. He opened the jar and poured some into his hand. "When you look at soil, what do you see? Mineral particles, organic matter, a growing medium," Kresh replied. "I see a city," Daesung said. "A city with billions of citizens, all working together. Bacteria that turn nitrogen from the air into food for plants, fungi that connect to plant roots and trade nutrients for sugars, insects that dig tunnels and let air and water reach deep underground, worms that eat dead matter and create the richest fertilizer in existence." He walked back to the platform and set down the jar. From his bag, he pulled another jar, this one filled with sterile Velkari agricultural soil. "This is from a farm on Viridian Prime," he said. "It's clean, precise, exactly formulated. When you look at it under a microscope, you see exactly what you put there, no more, no less." He poured some of this soil into his other hand. "This is also dirt, but it's dead dirt. It's a warehouse, not a city. You store nutrients in it, and plants withdraw them. When the nutrients run out, you add more. It works, but it's fragile." He set both jars on the platform side by side. "The question isn't whether my methods are primitive. They are. The question is whether primitive methods might teach us something we forgot." Elder Kresh leaned forward. "And what did we forget? That soil is alive. That diversity creates strength. That partnership lasts longer than control." Daesung pulled out his final item. A packet of seeds. These seeds represent 10,000 years of human farming. 47 generations in my family alone. They survived because we didn't try to make them perfect. We let them adapt. We partnered with them. He held up the seeds for everyone to see. "You can engineer a perfect tomato. It will be exactly what you design it to be. But when conditions change, and conditions always change, that perfect tomato can't adapt. It only knows how to be perfect in the exact situation you created. These seeds aren't perfect. They're different sizes. They grow plants of different heights. Some tomatoes will be big, others small. But they can adapt. They've been adapting for hundreds of generations. When the weather changes, some will struggle and some will thrive. The ones that thrive will make next year's seeds. That's evolution. That's nature's intelligence." A Velkari scientist stood up. "But we can modify genes faster than evolution. We can create adaptations in laboratories in months, not centuries." "You can," Daesung agreed. "But can you predict every possible future? Can you imagine every disease, every climate change, every new pest that might appear?" Evolution doesn't predict. It responds. It creates diversity. And diversity means that something will survive, even if you don't know what challenges are coming. The room was silent. Daesung could feel them thinking. Questioning, wondering, the Empress stood. Some of you are thinking that this farmer is asking us to abandon our achievements, to go backward. That's not what he's saying. She looked at Dae-sung. Iniwonjo. Iniwonjo. Tell them what you told me. Dae-sung nodded. Keep your technology. Keep your genetic engineering. Keep your efficiency. But add diversity. Add life to your soil. Add traditional methods alongside modern ones. Don't replace what you have. Strengthen it with what you lost. How? Someone called from the audience. Start small, Dae-sung said. Try it on 1 farm, then 10, then 100. Train farmers in both methods. Let them choose what works best for their land. Watch, learn, adapt. Tae-young stood up from where he sat with the observers. I was one of the skeptics, he said loudly. I thought human methods were backward and inefficient, but I've been training at Dae-sung's farm for 4 months. My soil is becoming alive again. My crops are stronger, and I understand farming in a way I never did before. Bora stood next. The data supports what Farmer Dae-sung says. Our agricultural system is fragile because it lacks diversity. We've optimized for current conditions. When those conditions change, we have nothing to fall back on. Adding traditional methods creates resilience. One by one, others stood. Farmers who had visited Viridian Prime, scientists who had studied the samples, administrators who had reviewed the pilot programs. The testimony built like a wave. Finally, Elder Kresh raised his hand for silence. The council will deliberate. Farmer Dae-sung, you have given us much to consider. 3 hours later, the council emerged with their decision. The Integrated Agricultural Initiative was approved. Funding would be provided to establish training farms on 50 worlds. Traditional methods would be taught alongside modern techniques. Genetic diversity would be prioritized in new crop development. Soil health would become a primary metric for agricultural success. That evening, Dae-sung stood with the Empress on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The lights stretched to the horizon. You've changed the empire, the Empress said. Your small farm started a revolution. Dae-sung shook his head. No, Your Majesty. I just planted seeds. You gave them room to grow. Will you stay? She asked. Will you continue teaching? For a while, Dae-sung said. But eventually, I need to go home. My farm needs me. And I'm not meant for palaces and politics. I understand, the Empress said. But know that you'll always be welcome here. And know that what you started will continue long after you're gone. 2 months later, Dae-sung returned to Viridian Prime. His farm looked the same, the simple hut, the uneven rows, the rich, dark soil. But around it, things had changed. Neighboring farms were trying compost bins. Some were planting diverse crops. The mocking had stopped. Kyojin visited him the day after his return. The old man looked embarrassed. I was wrong to doubt you, he said. I let my pride make me foolish. Could you? Dae-sung smiled and handed him a shovel. Come. We'll start with the compost. As the sun set, Dae-sung sat outside his hut with Hana. Students would arrive tomorrow. Officials would want reports. The work of spreading traditional farming would continue. But tonight, he just sat with his daughter, their hands dirty from honest work, and looked at the stars above. Do you think it will last? Hana asked. Do you think they'll really change? Some will, Dae-sung said. Some won't. But that's okay. We planted seeds of knowledge. Some will grow. That's all any farmer can do. Plant good seeds and trust in the soil. He picked up a handful of earth from the ground beside him. It was alive with possibility. Just like the future.